Welcome to Chew the Chat Podcast.
Hey everybody, how are you doing? How is 2021 going so far? At the point of recording this is Sunday the 3rd of January. I can report I've had a wonderful Christmas. It's been a lovely time, really, considering the restraints that we're all under and the madness that we're all manoeuvring through. I have been really lucky. It's been lovely. What I wanted to do today was just have a bit of a ramble. Producer Aidan has been tracked and traced and is in contact with the virus, so he's unavailable. So I thought I'd fill in the gap quite fittingly here to do a bit of a ramble chat round the year up, because we've just done our first year. This podcast started in January 2020, which was the first episode went out on 27th. I want to say the 27th of January, I think it was. First part with Matt Frost, who we had scheduled to do an episode during this Christmas period, but unfortunately with Aidan's situation we couldn't do it, but we will reschedule it. Yeah, that was the first episode, Matt Frost, part 1 and part 2, episode 1 and 2. That was back in January last year. So it's been mad. So timing wise it works out cool. I can do this ramble chat, I can round the year up, have a look back across some of the episodes that stand out, that have, for good reasons or bad, and look forward to the new year as well, and bring you in on some of the stuff that's happening, and just recount a few bits that have been lovely for me and for Aidan and for the little growth of this podcast, and maybe for you guys, a little community that we're building, this little tribe. But I guess, yeah, we'll go back to the start. So episode 1 with Matt Frost. I'm just going to drink some coffee. That was my first episode that we published, and Matt is he's the owner of Function First Fight Academy Martial Arts. He was a punker in the 70s, 80s, just travelled Europe, starting free parties and just bringing people together. He's now running his academy, his Fight Academy Function First, and within that he has the cryotherapy, lincolncryolab.co.uk, one of the sponsors of the show. He also has Lincoln Float Lab. And he's just an all-round dude, and I can't wait to get him in here to do this next episode, because we will do it, obviously, in video form as we are now, as we've grown into this kind of full-on video format, and you guys can meet him proper. But if you haven't listened, I do, you know, sort of advise, go back and have a listen to that first episode, because Matt is super interesting, and I can't wait to get him back in here, and we'll crack him open on all sorts of stories of his mad experience of life so far. And he's a really intuitive guy, and he's always on the edge of the next thing, and yeah, a lot of fun talking with Matt. So we'll get that done. That was episode number 1. By episode number 12, I managed to somehow convince Sam Griffiths to come in here via Zoom, albeit this was pre, I want to say this was pre-COVID 2020 going upside down. For people who don't know, Sam Griffiths is the singer, frontman, chief of the band The Howl and the Hum, who released their debut record this year, actually by the time they put their record out, ironically named Human Contact, during the first lockdown. I'd been to see them several times. They were a support band. I went to watch Boy Zuga a couple of years back now with some friends, and saw this support band who immediately I thought, wow, these have got something special. These are good. And we went to watch them several times and bumped into Sam and the band a couple of times and became quite friendly. And then I just reached out to him to wonder if he'd do the podcast. And he was a gentleman and a sweetheart, and he did the podcast, and that was wonderful. And yeah, he just cut his hair at the time, I think he just shaved his head, and he was kind of just readying himself for this crazy new world we were sort of adjusting to at that time when we had the conversation. And it was a real privilege for me, so that was a great one to look back on. And then we done the Four Brothers, which we haven't done for a while. There's been a little bit of internal politics, as I'm sure all of you guys who are in families understand. Families don't often, it's in my experience, I know it's very rare that I meet families that are just in general harmony most of the time and don't seem to have the ups and downs. But me and one of my brothers, the oldest of my 3 brothers, Harry, we bump heads pretty much all the time. I put it down to we were sort of brought up in an environment that was very combative and volatile, and unfortunately, we've sort of inherited in an intrinsic way between us in our, I don't think I'm like it in my relationships outside of my family, but I think there's that much gone on that we just bump heads and we disagree, and I think I just generally get up his nose, which is understandable. So yeah, we've not been able to do Four Brothers again, but from episode, I think it was it 6 and 8 and 10 was lockdown. So lockdown kicked in. And so true to form of this podcast coming around, which was to speak truth, to speak the mind, to have free speech, to look at life, the fascination with human beings, we thought, no, we'll carry on doing these podcasts. And I set up the situation to do video, to go into video and do video. And so with my brothers, it was a great thing professionally, because it was a great opportunity to come in here, check out the gear, get together. We're in an isolated studio. My little Chew the Chat Studio 52 is an isolated studio. It's not, you don't see people to get here. It's tucked out the way. And we were brothers. We're all in each other's bubble, if you will. And we're in an isolated place. So we took a gamble and we said, no, we're going to do the podcast anyway. And on the other side of it, referring to my point making at the start of the Four Brothers talk here, which was, the turbulence that we grew up in, and me being the oldest and us all, the youngest of us, I was 26 years old. So I wanted to try and create a situation, an environment where we could get together away from the bullshit, from the fucking poxy happy birthday meal for one of us that we're all going to go to because, our family seemed to just think by ticking the boxes of, whatever the neighbours will say seems to be being a family. And you don't be a family like that. That's not how you're a family. If you're not bonded, if you're not together, if you're not supportive of one another, if you're not in each other's lives because you choose to, because you want to be, because you just spend time, if all you do is turn up to the obligatory meals and have the photo and tick the box and here's the card and I love you, have a happy birthday, and then we all go on our way and we're all sort of, everybody around the table knows we're not where we need to be and it's unhealthy and you haven't said sorry to him and you never mentioned what happened there to that. Yeah, no, all that bullshit. So Four Brothers for me was just as much, more so actually probably, a way of trying to create an environment for me and my brothers to get together away from the wider politics and the little 7-minute soundbite meals that we get to sort of quickly exchange. Yeah, I'm good. Are you busy? Yeah, busy. Fucking whatever. Playing football, doing this, doing that. And actually get into a couple of 3 hours of conversation and opening things up. And on top of that, having it relaxing, having some lubricant, having some drinks, having some smoke, and just really getting to know each other. And by the third episode we did, which I think was number 10, which was the first episode we recorded with video, I felt like we were starting to get that. You guys might not know it having watched it, or if you haven't watched it, if you do watch it. But I noticed it with the guys just when they came in here, like for the third time they came in here when we met up, and they come in, drop the bags, hook up, have a quick chat, sit down, put the headphones on, and just getting comfortable in front of the mic and exchange of ideas and the flow of conversation. We got a bit better at not talking over each other and being a bit excited, and it really started to come together. And I there's a couple of moments where Joseph and I think Harry, who've had difficult times in the past, connecting and just being with one another, they had a couple of moments which were really nice, and I thought, oh man, it's working. We're actually dropping all the bullshit and leaving it at the door and just finding out who we are today and who we're going to be tomorrow, and not living on the versions of ourselves that have been confused and contaminated via the environment before. So those 3 episodes were good fun. If you like to have a drink, that's, and that part of this podcast, which I like to do, which I like to keep true to my life, which is to hook up with friends, have a drink, have a smoke, just chew the chat and just shoot shit. Those were filling that gap, and that was great. Hopefully in the future we can do it again, but, whether it's 3 of us, we'll see. But they were great episodes. And then a little bit further on from there, we're in lockdown. Those episodes are happening. And my good friend, one of my best friends at this point in life, David McGregor, invited me out wild camping. Now, people who have been listening and following the podcast at this point, I've been banging on about this all year because it's been an absolute epiphany for me. It's been, and my family actually, during a year where our mental health has been stretched and pushed to the limits. I found this to be just the timing and the remedy of it is just, probably too profound for me to even put into words, but I still try. But yeah, episode 16 was David and I wild camping. He'd done a previous episode where we did it in the studio. He's one of the early guests before video. There's an audio out there. I think the YouTube audio's on there, where Dave and I just have a couple of beers and talk about his upbringing in Doncaster and mining town. But yeah, the episode 16, which really stands out, was me just turning my memo on my phone when we were out camping, my first ever wild camp in the woods, and just recording bits of the conversation throughout the night and in the following morning. And I found that to be really profound. I'm so pleased I did that. I just realised that when I was laid with Dave in the woods, just with my little mosquito net and a sleeping bag and some beers and what have you, and he was leading the way, I was having all of these really powerful memories of being in the woods as a kid, you know, in that capacity where you just go and be lost in the woods and explore and create a den. And it was really poignant. And we were having these chats and it just struck me, luckily, to think, fuck it, I'll just hit record on the memo on my phone. And I didn't even tell him, and I'd forgotten about it after several beers and a smoke. And I'm really pleased I did it because that first ever wild camp for me is documented, and we had some really interesting chats, and it's a great episode. The audio's not too bad either. And again, as people who follow the show by this point know, David and I have gone on to, during this lockdown or not, you know, this mad year, getting out into nature has been enormous. And Dave's, we've had some real fun, and the Christmas special we've just done as well. So yeah, check out Dave's episodes. But 16 was great. A little bit further in and we start zooming, obviously because of the lockdown and guests and so on. When I started this podcast, I knew I wanted to, you know, the people that I knew locally in my life and in my city, I wanted to get, if they were up for it, get them on, because I've met a lot of interesting people. And the podcasts that I love, like Chris Ryan's Tangentially Speaking, a lot of the people that I'm inspired by, these people that they're not celebrities, they don't have profile and all this stuff, they've just got interesting lives and a truth that they speak. So that was a big part of it. But as we started to move through the gears and I was sort of expanding my web, if you will, I had guested on one of my favourite podcasts, Hardcore Listing, with Chris and Stu, which is part of the Distraction Pieces network. Excuse me while I drink some coffee. And I'd done their podcast, and having listened to them pretty religiously through Scroobius Pip. And if you haven't checked out Distraction Pieces Network, there's 7 or 8 podcasts on there. They're great. And Scroobius Pip's Distraction Pieces podcast is brilliant. And the boys, Chris and Stu with Hardcore Listing, it's a great shits and giggles podcast. I do say check that out, because if you like a loose kind of half an hour, 40 minutes, just silly shit, it's great. But yeah, I did their podcast, and obviously we just connected. We really hit the ground running, chatting all things breastfeeding, MMA, and all sorts in between. And the guys were good enough to come back on my podcast individually and become friends, you know. And Stu, who's one of the directors of the Podbible Magazine, who's obviously helped us. That's the only advertising we've done. We've put a couple of ads out with Podbible, and they've been really cool with us. They've done some editorial with us. They've just been really supportive, helped us out no end. Really lovely reaching out to those guys and then getting that connection through this magical podcast world that seems to happen. You know, when you really do find something that you love and you sort of stick with it, as I hope you guys do with this, you know, these wonderful magical things can happen. And Stu coming on my podcast was amazing. I really appreciated his time, and we're friends at this point. And actually, we've got plans this year. Keep forgetting to say it's this year, not next year. This year, 3rd of January, we're going to go out and do a camp because they've never been up to the peaks. So we're going to take them up to the peaks. We're going to do a camp, and then we'll come in studio with Chris and Stu, and we'll probably just do a shits and giggles one and have some fun. So that will be something to look forward to. Episode 29. So we're cooking at this point. This is around September. We're kind of used to this lockdown, not lockdown thing. You know, that's kind of novelty's worn off. But the podcast, we're into September. We've been doing video, like I say, since March, since that episode 10. And my battle with social media and wanting to be on social media and not wanting to be on it, and recognising if we're all truthful with ourselves, if we didn't spend all the time fucking about on there thinking that we're doing things that are useful or not, we'd be better off for it. We really would. There's no two ways about it. But it has enabled me to connect to people I would never, not otherwise be able to get to, at least so directly. And being a big fan of the Sean Atwood True Crime podcast and Sean's channel in general, Sean's got one of the biggest UK podcast channels, 600,000 subscribers, I think. And he chats as an ex-con himself and somebody who's recovered and now goes around schools talking to kids and trying to promote a positive choice, a positive future for kids. Again, this podcast is all about that trajectory and the fascination with what happens to children and how that sets trajectory so often moving into adult life, and then what that means for a healthy community, healthy civilization. I love his podcast, and on there I caught Darren G. And Darren G, I'd heard quite a bit about the G family from Liverpool, a notorious family in Liverpool, violence. Danny G's one of the most violent prisoners in the UK. It is said via myth. But Darren G, I saw on Sean's podcast, and he was really engaging, really fascinating, and I felt an affinity with him. I felt some parallels. And then there was talk that he'd done this James English podcast, so I'd seen bits of James English along the time, and I checked that out and went over to James and watched him on James English as well. And I felt compelled, and I felt like he was the kind of guy that if I was to reach out to him, I think he would respond. I think he would see what I'm trying to do, and I think he'd help me out and want to be part of what I'm doing. And I did that. And for anybody who does know Darren's story, he's got death threats on his life. He's upset a lot of people by uncovering drugs culture in Liverpool and turning his back on the drug culture and the crime and gang culture. And he was cool, and he agreed to come down here, and we met, and I took him, picked him up, and we spent some time together, and we had food, my wife and stuff, and we fed him and had a lovely time, and he did the podcast, and it was a breakthrough moment for us because Darren's got a mad cult following, it turns out, on Instagram and on YouTube and online. And that episode was really the first episode that gave us a little breakthrough. Certainly on YouTube, we went from, I think we'd celebrated 100 subscribers the week before. Aidan and I had done a t-shirt design, Lockdown Liars t-shirt that went down great, and we did like a 10 t-shirt giveaway, which was fantastic because we were over the moon that we'd hit 100 subscribers on YouTube. Felt amazing. And then we had Darren on the following week, and we went up to 2,000 subscribers, and his episode hit something like 60,000 views on YouTube alone, or I don't know, within a week. And that was really humbling, and it was my first sort of inroad to like, oh shit, fuck, do I want to do this? There's shitloads of comments. Some people are saying, this is amazing. This is up there with James English and Sean Atwood, and, sort of name dropping Chew the Chat, this humble little podcast with some of my favourite podcasts, saying that we're as good, if not better. This is a fucking really cool vibe. Love the studio. And then you'd come across the odd comment which was like, fucking hell, this host is sending me to sleep. Fucking wake up, blah, blah, blah. And then I would realise, fuck, I'm getting drawn in. Do I even want to do this shit? Like, I'm smart enough at this point in my own head to know that you don't read comments and take comments, positive or negative, on board. Either way, yeah, it's nice to know that people get what you're doing, because that's why you're doing it. You're trying to share your experience. You're trying to unravel this experience, because I believe we're all scared to fucking death in some way behind our eyes, inside our skin. And the more that we can understand that we're all like that, the better it seems to be. And that's why I do it. But yeah, it's a fucking reminder when you get, when you get some neg, but it's all part of the process. And I quickly squared myself up, fucked off and did some camping, left my phone alone. And I've been working towards not having the phone in my hand as much ever since. But what an episode that was. Darren became a friend. We've stayed in contact. It's been really cool watching him make the changes and adjust and find positivity in his life. And he's certainly inspiring a lot of young people. And he just announced recently on his 3rd episode on the James English podcast that he's going to be a dad. And I've spoken to him and we're gonna do this again. He's gonna come down again, and we're gonna chat all things positive about parenting and creating a world for young people that, which gives them a line of positivity and support and safety and an ability to find out who they are in and around all this peer pressure. So amazing episode that was, and a real breakthrough, and I can't thank Darren enough for giving us his time. Then straight after that we did Longusto, which was amazing. Longusto was fantastic. We just, first time we'd met proper, Ben and I, musician from he's based down in Brighton as a rapper, done so much cool stuff, like satirical, clever, hip trip hop rap music, brilliant. And we had a great night. He brought a bottle of rum and we drank that, and we just went in deep for like 3 hours, and we ran into a bit of a wall with some COVID chat, and we got a bit of a telling off from YouTube, and I don't think we've recovered. I'll take a moment right now to sort of mention this. I think because we do talk pretty openly and I share my thoughts, not to be right or wrong, I just share my experience regarding COVID and what I feel, and guests, we've gone in on it a couple of times whenever it comes up, and I haven't shied away from it, but the algorithm does not like that, and I think we have been sort of shuffled to the bottom of the pack a little bit, which, we live with it. The numbers, they're not where they should be, and maybe maybe I should shut up, but I'm not going to. We're going to carrying on, and there's things happening in the future that we're going to try and mitigate some of this in our own way, which we'll get to. But that was a great episode, and a little bit of an eye-opener to remembering that YouTube don't like everything that you say these days, and we got a little squash, but it was a great episode, loved it, great fun. And then not long after that we got Chris Glasson. So I mentioned Chris and Stu, Hardcore Listing, got Chris on. Chris is famous for not doing podcasts, not listening to podcasts. It's an inside joke within the Distraction Pieces, as Pips is probably his best friend, massive podcaster in the UK, 8 podcasts or so on his network. And Chris doesn't listen to him, but he came on this podcast and it was lovely. And we just had like I said before, it's like we've been muckers for years, just laughing and joking at all things inappropriate and making plans for the future. And that was a great episode, and I was really blessed to have his time, so that was cool. And then not long after that, Tony Gooch. So Tony Gooch, again in the same vein as Darren G, a reformed criminal who's really trying to help the young by sharing his stories, by trying to get young lads to think again. His movement, his hashtag is Think First, and just trying to persuade young lads to just get away from the gang culture and create something for themselves where they're not going to end up either dead or in jail. And it was a great episode, and he was a really buoyant character, and I couldn't believe that he's done the things he's done, and he's such a lovely lad, but a violent criminal once upon a time. And a great episode, and we've kept in touch, and he gave me a shout out later on when he did another appearance on the Sean Atwood show, on Sean Atwood's True Crime podcast. And that was a really, again, it's nothing to most people, but to me it was a really nice moment, because I'd had a genuine rapport with Tony, and he carried that on a couple of months later. And when he did go on a big podcast, he took the time to give us a shout out, and to see my little podcast get a shout out in positive faith on one of my favourite podcasts that got me even started was a real little moment for me, and I can't thank Tony enough. And again, a flood of people came over, and we grew the channel again, and so I'm sure we'll do something again in the future. But a great episode, and a real eye-opening episode. Tony didn't hold back. That was a great episode. And then not long after that, I had another little bingo moment where I reached out to DJ Slipmat. Now, people of my age, maybe even a bit younger, certainly a bit older, will remember the rave days. They were big, and they still are, which I've learned. And I thought, ooh, Slipmat. And there's a few guys from back in the era that I thought, man, I used to have all these guys on my walls. I loved rave. I was too young to go, but I had all these flyers and all this stuff on my wall, and it was amazing. But getting those responses, and Slipmat coming back to me so magnanimous and sweet and humble, and like, yeah, let's do it. And at one point he was going to come to the studio, but then I think we hit another lockdown or some shit, and we ended up zooming him in. But again, can't thank him enough. And what an insight, and what a lovely guy. Really, really inspiring guy. And he told me, all of us, you guys as well, a couple of books that really changed his life. I think Cybernetics and the other one was called, fucking hell, let it come to me. Q cut in the video where he says what it is.
Dr. D Martini over the last few years. He's a really, really, really clever geezer. But he's done a couple of books all around values. One of them's called The Values Factor. And for me, it's an absolute game changer.
Yeah, great guy, super duper guy. Really enjoyed having him on, and it was a fanboy moment for me, as it was having Sam from The Howl and the Hum on. You know, I've managed to squeeze a couple of fanboy moments in, and it's been amazing. Another standout episodes from the year were kind of when I've had my kids on. You know, like I think episode 18 and 32 were Sonny and Jesse, my two boys, in that order. Really cool, and I think little documents that we won't even realise how important they are until we're way in the future on their 18th birthday, and I play them back, you know, a podcast episode they did when they were 5, which was basically just a chat with their dad that I recorded, and they didn't really understand what was going on. But yeah, nevertheless, we've got them documented, and it was lovely. And I've got a version of Sonny's in particular where he was singing along to songs. We were just sat in here, it was an impromptu. We were listening to songs by the Beatles and Sam Fender, and we were singing along, but I couldn't put them in the video because obviously YouTube will not allow it. But I've got a full-length version somewhere when I will get that up and available to you guys, where we're singing along to the songs, and he's so sweet. And then the Jesse episode where we're actually out camping, which I really had a magical time with him, and we just got little bits of clips, and he's just such a sweet boy. I mean, Jesse, he makes me want to be a better man. He's just so selfless and pure and lovely, and I just fucking find all the holes in myself when I'm with Jesse. So again, lovely to have that documented. And then obviously the episode we've just done, number 45, with my stepdaughter, from my ex-partner's daughter, who just remained in one another's lives, remained bonded, remained, you know, as important as ever, if not more, because we've grown 20 years of bond by this point. So having her on as a young student, a young woman tackling the world, again, another document in years to come will be really nice to have for her and for me and for the family. So yeah, that was some episodes from this year that I've really enjoyed, that have stood out to me for various reasons. But the whole fucking journey's been great, man. The first year's been great. It's been a mad time. We hit the video stuff when the lockdown started happening, and it was fucking Frankie Furlough. It was like, what we're going to do? So fuck it, we'll crank it up. We'll go video. We'll spend a little bit of money, and we'll try and get this show on the road visually. And I'm pleased we did, because I love creating environments. The environment's cool in here. We've tried to make this feel like you guys at home are just sat in with us. You know, I didn't want it to be too formal. I mean, some of my favourite podcasts that I love the conversations, but I'm a little bit of a stickler for, like, I like environments. I like creating an environment. I like creating an energy and a vibe. And some of the podcasts I watch, it just feels a little bit formal, just bare walls and a bare table and a bare mic and a kind of sort of like, I don't know, there's just, and listen, we're all different. We all fancy different shit, but I just tried to create something in here which is reflective of my world, you know. I love my little things, my little psychedelia and my Egyptians and me mushrooms, and I just like that vibe and music and film, and we wanted to introduce that into here and have it almost be like a front room or a bedroom, and when you're watching, you're sat in with us, and we're just, we're like literally chewing the chat, shooting the shit, and you're in with us. And if we're having a drink on the episodes, or if we're having a smoke, or whatever it is we're doing, you're just with us, and that's the vibe. I wanted to create that, and I'm really proud of that. And Frankie Furlough made all that possible, the time given to us to be able to utilise. So that was what we did, and it's been a great year, and we've got a lot coming on next year. Another thing that happened was really random and cool was, we received a message one day, like we do often after episodes, you know, and it's from a guy in the Philippines, English guy in the Philippines, who said, look, this is going to seem a bit weird, but I've just come across your podcast by total random chance on an Instagram feed, must be a mutual friend or some shit, whatever it was, and really, really enjoy it. And ironically, I'm not sure you'll remember me, but I remember you. And as people who listen to podcasts now, I've done music for years, and I still do music. Adrenochrome. Go to Spotify, Google Adrenochrome. Music's out there. Last single went out beginning of this month. If you like kind of Daft Punky, Depeche Mode digital dance music with songs, words, choruses. But this guy reached out and said, I did a piece. I used to have a publication in Lincoln. When I was in Lincoln, I had a publication, and we did a piece on one of your singles, and I've really been enjoying the podcast. It's been a real kind of taste of home, and I'm actually working on the Sean Atwood podcast as a booking agent and a sort of a planner and processor. And if there's anything I can do to help you, I'd love to help, and give me a shout, and maybe I can help you out with guests and blah 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 blah. And as I've just said, being a big fan of the Sean Atwood podcast and the UK podcast movement, it was like, whoa, what's the fucking chances of that? That is so cool. So I was obviously super grateful to Ash, powerful Ash, you out there. And he's been a little mentor with me and has helped me sort of keep believing in what I'm doing, and keep shoveling, and just keep on doing what I'm doing, basically. And we've formed an alliance, and he's helping us with some really exciting stuff. As next year will prove, we've got plans for some guests. So these aren't all concrete. This is all kind of chat between me and these people, but I think we can say these are probably going to happen. So Michael Maisie, who again I came across initially on Sean's podcast, English lad, come from a terrible background of lack of love, just a broken family, a lot of abuse, alcoholism. He went into care, all sorts of mad shit happened, and he's turned his life around. He now has the CIP project, the Change is Possible project. He's written a book, Young Offender, which I've just finished, which is amazing, Michael, by the way, if you're watching. And I chatted to him. We've gone back and forth quite a bit on Instagram via video, and he's a lovely, sweet guy, and he's going to come on the podcast, and he's got a story that just fits the bill perfectly for this podcast, which is rising up from the flames of a difficult start, a difficult childhood, recognizing how much love is available, and how to cultivate love, and certainly how to manifest it, and how to put it back in your own life and into the people around you. And his book is amazing, and for young people who are looking to find some inspiration to get off the tracks to the wrong place, Michael's a dude. As I've mentioned, Darren's going to come back on. We're going to chat all things parenting with Darren, so I'm sure that'll be really interesting. I've had several people after the Darren G episode hitting us up on YouTube, sending us messages saying, loving the podcast, really, really cool to know we've got another podcast alongside James and Sean. You need to get Marvin Herbert on. Get Marvin on. It'd be a great guest. Please get Marvin on. I've had this from, countless 7-8 messages from different people. And so I said, okay, cool. I didn't know a lot about Marvin at the time. I've seen clips of him about, and so I did a bit of digging and checked him out. And I went to James English's episodes with him and checked him out, and then with Sean's and his own podcast now. What's Marvin's podcast called? Again, cut to fucking Marvin. Nothing But the Truth, I want to say. What an interesting dude Marvin is. And again, he fits the bill, the same thing. These people that I'm kind of drawn to, these people that have just turned their heels on a life where they were in and managed to recognise things, look at themselves square in the mirror and say, hang on a minute, I can do better. I am better than this, and I can do better for these people around me. And Marvin has got some serious stories, man. I mean, he's been shot 5 times. I think he's been axed in the head. He's been stabbed. His eye got shot out. It just, crazy, man. He's done some serious violent crime, and he's turned his life around, and he's got a real spiritual element to him, which I'm really interested about. And it's not really been dug into too much on the podcast I've seen, and that's where I want to go with him. And Marvin said he's up for doing this, so that's really exciting. Hopefully we can nail that down. In the same vein, again, Billy Moore. Now, for people who listen to this podcast, they know that I've lived in Thailand. I've got a lot of affinity with Thailand. Been going to Thailand since I was a kid. My second son, young Jess, was born there. This whole Buddhist scenario is a big part of the culture because we've been going there for so long, and part of my stepmom and my sister and my dad, it's a big energy that comes in, not in a religious sense, but in a in a karmic sense. And I'd read a book a long time ago by Billy Moore, his experience of being locked up in jail, you know. And if anybody knows Billy's story, then you probably know the film with Joe Cole starring A Prayer Before Dawn. Now, that is a fucking visceral film. For anybody who's been to Thailand, they capture Thailand and the commotion and the mayhem and the corruption perfectly. And Billy's story is amazing. And he's a dude. He's a real dude. He's a roughy, tufty Scouser who's in touch with his sensitivities. And I think he's just finished his second book, and we've been chatting back and forth through the old Instagram. Had a lovely phone conversation over Christmas, and I'm going to go and see Billy and do Billy's podcast, and Billy's going to come on here, and we're going to chat Thailand and our experiences in Thailand, and obviously his second book and stuff. And so that's going to be really exciting. And it goes on and on. I mean, I've got a list here that I could keep going. I mean, Paul Hazy from YouTube, for all the campers who like the camping stuff that we do. Hayes is a massive influence on us from the camping videos. He's a Whitby lad, and he just does funny, really insightful videos, but he just plays with it. He has a lot of fun, and he's agreed to come on, and he's friends with Matt Morgan. He takes Matt Morgan out a lot, and I love Matt's affiliation with Noel Gallagher and Russell Brand and all that. So yeah, Hayes is going to come on. We've just got to work it out when. That's really exciting. Looking forward to that. Dr. Grace Robinson, who's an academic and really pushing and making the public aware of the county line situation with kids and drugs and social issues that come along with county lines, and the criminality and just the pain of how society's kind of created this monster with the county line systems of drug dealing. So she's coming on. Benjamin Zephaniah. I hope we can get this one sorted. In principle, it's been agreed. Benjamin, again, for people who know, he's a poet. He's a writer. He's a playwright. He's just an all-round dude, man. He's a Jamaican who grew up in Birmingham. With Jamaican parents, came over in the Windrush, and he's a Rasta poet and full of love and political poignance. And he's a Lincolnshire boy at this point in life. He lives out in Lincolnshire, so we're hoping to get that one sorted, because I've been reading his books and following his poetry, and I've dived deep into Benjamin, and he is a dude. So Benjamin, if you're seeing this, let's get this nailed down. But in principle, we're there. I think we've got a mutual friend, so hopefully that's going to work out. And then just a load of other people that are just so cool. I could keep going. Ron Swanson, the dark web expert, who just opened my eyes to the reality of giving your kids phones and what's going on in the world, the dark world that we sometimes don't want to think about, but paedophilia, the way the world's changing, access to information, and children having phones and apps and shit. He's a fucking dude. He's very colourful. He's very, very animated. He's also a camper, and we've got plans to go on a camp and do a couple of podcasts, and there's loads of shit. I could go on and on and on, but I'll leave it there for that. This year we're going to be promoting our website. So we put a website together. 40 Miles West have built us a website. We reached out to us and just said, look, you need a website. We want to do you a website. Let us do you a website. So I was like, fucking thank you so much. Appreciate it. That website is up and running, I believe, as of now. So I'm going to link to it in the description below this video. But the aim of the game is going to be to try and build that website and put our content, coffee break, by the way. And not rely on YouTube, Instagram. I'm so close to fucking Instagram off, but as I've clearly just pointed out, all these guests that I'm chatting to, these people that I'm reaching, it's through Instagram. And it does point to what we're doing, and I'm just trying to find ways of disciplining myself and not pressing that nasty little magnifying glass fucking button and watching people doing press-ups in Miami and fucking camel racing in fucking wherever, and just fucking 50,000 scrolls later, what am I doing? But by building our own website and housing everything in one place, I think as we move forward, what we are going to learn in the new world, epoch SARS-CoV-2, I think we're going to realise that the censorship and the control of content is going to be accelerating at speeds that we're just going to be having a narrative that is very, very well manicured to suit whatever the mainstream arc is, and I don't want to be part of that. I want to speak truth. That's the reason we do this podcast. Truth is a difficult thing because we don't always want to hear it, and it's not to say that it's right in any way. We all got our own truths, but the freedom of speech, the freedom to think is what's being eroded. We've got to maintain that, and this podcast is about that, whether it's me or the guests or whoever the fuck. If we get it wrong, we get it wrong, but we've got to speak from our hearts, from our guts. We've got to tell it as this experience as it is. And I think the only way we're going to be able to do that in the future is to make sure that we are the owners of our content, and we're not relying upon things like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We've got to try and create the stuff and own it ourselves and create the communities and make them stronger. So that's what we're doing. The website should be up and running now, so go and check it out. It's very simple at the moment. I'm going to be blogging, so there's a blog on there. I'm going to use that blog as my kind of therapeutic outlet. So in between these chats, I'm just going to just do blogs of whatever it is, chew the chat, but often it'll be personal stuff. Not so much for you guys who watch here in YouTube, but for people who listen to the audio, I do like a 20-minute intro on the audio versions of these podcasts. So you get what you see now, you get this audio of the actual podcast, but you also get 20-minute lead-in, which is me chatting about what's been happening, what might be happening, a bit like these ramble chats. This ramble chat is as close to the intros and as it's going to get, really. It's just a roundup of what's going on, chew the chat, as opposed to just the actual guests. But the blogs are going to be interesting because I do miss writing. Writing's good for you. Writing's good to just put your thoughts down and get lost and follow the pen and see where you end up. So I'm going to start doing those. I think I've done 3 already. The blog's going to be on there. There's access to, obviously, to the podcast itself on there. All the contact will come through there. So, just sign up for a newsletter. Let us know who you are. Send us a message. If you know guests, if you think you're a guest, if you think you've got an interesting story to share, just hit us up, send us a message. We will respond. We will come back to you. Join the community and let's form a community, because you're going to find this is going to happen as we move forward. Instagram, Facebook, it's all being sterilised by the minute, man. The terms and conditions are sick. If you take a minute to look at them, it's sick. We're going to have to start creating these communities. And it means more anyway. Everything's great. It's abundant when you're scrolling down Instagram and, I follow them and I follow this. But there's a slight disconnection. There's a slight diminished connection, because when you actually go to the website, when you actually become a patron or whatever it is, it means more, because it's more of a diversion of your time. And I think that's where we're going to be going in the future. So the website's a big thing. I'm really excited about it. Check it out. Drop us a line. Drop us a message. Let us know who you are. And we'll keep growing that. We're going to put commerce on it. We'll get the shop up, and we'll get all of our t-shirt line out. These little mugs, which are wonderful, we'll get them out there. You can have a mug. We'll do a giveaway. I think we're going to do some giveaways of floating and cryotherapy as well for people who get involved. But we'll work that out as it comes. But as a whole, I'm not going to go on for too much longer. I had ideas to talk about the dreaded, but I'm not going to bother, because I don't think I need to. We all know where we are at this point. Last year has been mad. This year is going to be what we decide it is. If we want to take control, if we want to have ownership of our decisions, we can do that. You can do that. And if you do it, you might find that they do it. And if they're doing it, you might find you're doing it, and so on. So we can do that. But in the meantime, I just want to say thank you very much. 1 year. We've done a year. Chew the Chat's done a year. Pretty much, this month. So it's been mad. It's been a fucking strange year to start doing a podcast, and tricky to get guests, and lockdown this and fucking restrictions that, and tears here and tears there. But we've done it, and we will continue to do it. So that little list of potential guests coming up this year, keep your eye out. Like I said, the newsletter once a month will give you information and insight. You can bounce us stuff. If you are not following us on Instagram, head over, give us a hit on Instagram. If you're watching this video and you're not subscribed, hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, let these videos drop in your lap. And tell a friend, man. That's the most important thing. If you enjoy it, if you take something from it, if there's something worthy for you, then tell a friend, and let's grow this little tribe and try and make sense of this mental fucking life that we're all trying we're all trying to get through, because there's beauty in it. There's beauty in it when you find the others, as Terence used to say, Mr. Powerful Terence McKenna, find the others. So anyway, all the links are down in the bottom of this video. The new website is www.chewthechat.com. Dead simple. All the links will be in here. There is one more thing I'm going to do, I think, if I can work a way of getting it around it rights-wise. I'm going to do a playlist. So again, for people who listen to the audio, we play a track in each week that sort of is either music by the guest or to do with the guest, or tracks that I just pick that I just think fit the conversation and kind of round off the energy of the vibe. So I think I'm going to do a 2020 playlist. I'm going to put all those tracks together and create a playlist. Whether or not I put it out in an audio podcast format or a Spotify playlist, I don't know. I'll work that out. But in the meantime, get yourself out wild camping in these fucking lockdowns. It's great, man. It's where it's at. It's how you're going to fucking, for me anyway, it's been utter peace and sanity and reconnection in ways that I can't even describe. So I'm going to give you a little montage of this year's camping as we play out. But thank you everybody. Thank you for being part of the tribe. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for caring. And let's hope that 2021 can be what we need it to be, which is unified together. Let's put the phones down a little bit and pick our lives up. Take care of each other. Peace.
Such